Welcome to Spooky Ass Shit. I am your host, Eric Dwinnells, and with me tonight, yes, finally another guest here in the lovely studios, Brian Toney.
Hey! Do you have a name for your studio? Like, do you call this the something? Like Marin's garage? Or
It's the studio apartment.
I'll take it.
Well, it's technically not a studio.
This is big for a studio, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Brian, before we get into today's topic, which is going to be the Bloody Benders, by the way. Have you ever heard of them?
I have not. This is a band?
No.
Okay.
It is a good band name, though.
All right.
But no, it's a family of murderers, allegedly.
What? All right.
But, back in pioneer days.
Nifty.
Oregon Trail style murderers.
Okay.
But we'll get to them.
Stephen has been disemboweled.
First, I want to talk about last week's episode, which you weren't here for. Don't worry, I'm going to give you the brief rundown. I was looking for a show. I hadn't talked about a murder in a while. I hadn't done a local story in a while. This is the kind of thought I put into the show.
I know. I haven't talked about a murder in a while.
I've done ghosts and I've done UFOs
now,
and I've done goofy stuff, but I haven't done a murder in a while. So let's try doing a murder. And I just found this one randomly when I was looking up Massachusetts murders on Murderpedia, as you do. And it was the murder of Lynn Ann Smith and Stephen Goldberg.
Oh, yeah, that one.
She was a babysitter in Springfield in the 1950s, and she was murdered while she was babysitting. And she and one of the children that she was babysitting for were both murdered. Very sad story. But as I'm putting the story together, I'm looking online for any information, and there's not a ton of stuff out there about it because it's, kind of in the worldview, kind of a small crime in a local area, and it's turned out that she knew the murderer and all that stuff, so it wasn't like a serial killer or something like that, so it wasn't going to get huge publicity, but she was a 14-year-old girl, so there were some stories about it. And yeah.
Why does this sound really familiar to me? Is this like a similar storyline to something that we did one time?
We haven't done a babysitter murder.
All right.
And that's what stuck out to me about it when I saw babysitter, because that's such a classic trope in horror movies and stuff.
Yeah.
But I got to be honest with you, Brian. I think I got a little bit woke, as the kids say.
Oh boy.
So brace yourself.
Can't
for
wait
this.
to hear how that manifested.
Well, what happened was I was trying to find pictures online, or I was looking for anything related, and I found a couple pictures online, but all of them belonged to some historical photo website, and they all had big watermarks over the faces and everything, so you couldn't get a clear picture, right? But I looked at the place, and it said that they're selling these vintage photos, and you can buy them, and it showed the front and the back and everything, and these were pictures that were sent to the press to be used in newspaper stories about them. And actually, if you do look her up, you'll find what looks like kind of an old-timey newspaper photocopy-ish style picture of her that's not very clear. But they had the actual photo for sale, one of the copies of the actual photo for sale from 1950 or whatever.
I was going to say, 1950s had decent photography, right?
Yeah, but they didn't transfer so well to the newspapers, I guess.
So, yeah.
But in any event, I ended up buying one of these pictures because, I said, well, look, this is a home state girl. She deserves better than to just be for sale, on some website. And also, I wanted to have a nice, clear picture of her for the website, right?
And also, you're making so much money off this podcast that you can pretty much spend it on whatever you want.
That's very much false, but it wasn't expensive. I think it was $10 or whatever. So, so I got it, and like I said, on the website they showed the front and the back of the photo, but on the back, I'm going to show it to you in a second here.
Great, now I'm complicit.
But clearly, this is a, what they would use in a newspaper, and you can see they've marked it up with the size and dimensions that they want it to be. They've got some names listed back here. And
wait a second. Did
Yeah.
you write that stuff?
no, I didn't write any of this. This was here.
This is the. So this
You
is
can see it's stamped 1954, 1955.
a copy, ostensibly, because they're not giving you the original picture.
No, this is an original vintage picture.
But it's the one.
It's
that
not.
they've-
This isn't. Probably what happened is they asked the family for photos. The family sent photos. People made copies and gave it to the Associated Press, to the local
wow.
paper. So this is a picture that a paper, I don't know which one, would have used in their story
That's
if they
kinda
decided to
creepy,
use it. Well, what's creepy about it is the notes on the back. It says left to right, and then it lists the people's names. And then also someone has taped a little blurb from about the trial on the back.
Yeah.
Also, they've underlined Lynn Ann Smith's name in pen, and then with a little curly line, she was stabbed to death.
Oh, okay.
Now, I'm looking at this, and I'm holding it, and I'm thinking this was a 14-year-old girl.
She's the one in the middle, right?
She's the one in the middle. And
Okay.
how would you... Because to me, I chose this picture because it was the less common of the two, and the face was a little bit more expressive. I think what's actually going on in this picture is she's squinting because they're outside, and it's probably a little sunny.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the stuff on the back kind of spooked me a bit, and then seeing her face. Also, something to point out, this woman over here on the right, where they're doing the bunny ears behind her,
Mm-hmm.
that's her friend Beverly,
Yeah.
who happened to be the sister of the man who killed her.
Cool. Nice.
So I'm looking at this picture, and I'm thinking what's so sad about it, of course, is that she was murdered, and she was only 14 years old. She didn't really get to leave a mark on the world, and all that we know about her, really, is that she was a victim of a murder. And there's people, they could be listening right now, but people in this very state that might have known her, or at least knew her story because they went to school at that time. She would have been in the class of 1957, I do believe. But not only Lynn Ann Smith and her story, but what about Beverly over here? How does this crime affect her? Like, her brother murdered her best friend. And we don't hear, the newspaper only tells you part of the story. Like, it just tells you the most sensational thing. And then I have a podcast that kind of does the same thing.
Yeah. Wait, they're supposed to be the same age?
Yeah, about.
She looks much older on the right. Or at least in that picture.
Well, she's half-
presenting as much older.
This one here?
No, on my right, your left. Yeah. She looks like she could be her
Well, she looks kind of like a big girl.
older cousin or something. Yeah, maybe it's just the hair. I don't know.
It was the 50s was a weird time for hair. It
Well,
seems
I
like
suppose that's
they
true.
wanted to look older.
Yeah.
Actually, someone on Facebook commented that she looked kind of old in the pictures too, and I was like, well, that's a little distasteful to comment on somebody. But on the other hand, their haircuts did tend to make them look old. So I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say, but I just think, obviously murder is bad. That's not news. And
I'm with you.
especially,
It's a controversial stance, but I'll stand with you.
yeah. Hey, listen, I'm willing to take these stands.
Well, you're a brave man.
Yeah. But I don't know. Now I don't know what I'm going to do with that picture. I'm not going to hang it up in my living room, but I want to treat it with respect somehow. And I just think of all the it made me think of the lives that would have been touched by that case, I guess.
Yeah.
Is what it did. In a way that I don't normally think of things like that. Anyway, Brian, should we get into our case for today?
Yeah. Let's get all happy now, talking about not one murder, not one murderer, but multiple murderers.
Yeah, well,
allegedly.
Let's see here.
As good as the record keeping was.
So after the American Civil War, Brian,
Mm.
the U.S. government moved the Osage Indians out of their traditional territory in Kansas.
That doesn't sound like something the U.S. government would do.
Yeah. They were all about those relocation programs. And they moved them into what they would call Indian territory.
All right.
This is land that would eventually become the great state of Oklahoma. Boomer Sooners. I made a sports reference, Brian.
Is that what they say? I'm aware of that team name.
Huh?
Well, that's the Sooners, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I went to Colorado. We were in their league for a while. They were better, much better than us.
So all this new land opened up, right? Because they got rid of the natives. So they're like, hey, we've got all this land, for white people.
Yeah.
So people started taking up this land along the Great Osage Trail. Nope, I didn't say that right. Osage, right? That's how they say it?
I've always heard Osage, but neither pronunciation really sounds like a native pronunciation, but I don't know.
Okay, I'm going to try that again. So a lot of people started taking up land along what they called the Great Osage Trail. Like I said, this is rather like Oregon Trail.
Okay.
Thanks for being so quick and ready to jump in.
I had no idea what you were talking about. Literally none. Is this the famed Oklahoma land rush? Is that what we're doing right now?
I don't think so, because first they moved the natives out there.
Okay.
And then, so the area that they were in was open to the white people, and then the white people were like, wait, we need more land. Move those engines again. And I think that's when the Oklahoma land rush came in. And the Sooners, as a matter of fact.
I was just excited that I remembered a history thing.
Yeah. And the Sooners were cheaters. Did you know that? Do you know that's where the name comes from?
They went early, right?
They went early, yeah, before they were supposed to, and cheated and put their marks down. Anyway.
Good thing to name a team after.
Well, there's worse.
Imperialistic cheaters. Let's go.
Now, one of the families that bought land on this trail was the Benders.
Still love this.
The head of the household was a 64-year-old man, believed to be from Germany, although there is a lot of question about that. But his name was John Bender, Sr. He came into the area with his son, a 25-year-old man named John Bender, Jr.
Okay.
So we have the father and son team coming out, and they build themselves a barn with a corral and a well.
By themselves?
Well,
impressive.
I don't know. It's, the records of the times are, but this is what I was able to find. And now, so once they had built the home and the well and the corral and everything, they said, okay, now we can bring out the women of the family. So at this time, John's wife, John Sr.'s wife, of course.
Joanna.
No, she was 55 years old, and her name was Elvira.
All right.
And Elvira brought with her the family's daughter, 23-year-old Kate.
Okay.
Now, just a little odd thing to point out about this family. The father speaks barely any English, and it's very heavily accented in what they say is either a German or perhaps a Netherlands accent.
Sure.
The son also, he speaks English fluently, but he also has an accent, thick accent, and he laughs like at inappropriate times.
I don't know what that's like.
And a lot of people thought he was what they call, quote unquote, a half-wit.
All right.
Now, Elvira also had an accent, and...
But they're saying, sorry, they're saying he's a half-wit, but he speaks perfect English.
Well, better than his dad, anyway.
Okay.
They said he's fluent in English. I didn't say he was perfect. He's
All
got
right.
an accent.
All right.
And then Elvira, also very broken English, doesn't understand much, so is claimed. And then there's 23-year-old Kate, who speaks perfect English with just a trace of an accent.
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't sound that weird to me.
Okay, I'm just mentioning this.
Okay.
Hold on to that information. Right. Might sound weird to you later on.
Okay. Where are they coming from, though? They're not...
Well, that's a good question.
They're not coming from overseas. They're coming from somewhere else in the U.S.?
We're going to attempt and fail to answer these questions later on.
All right, let's get failing.
But we're going to move on from here. So this was in 1871. Now that finally all this has happened, the family of four is together, living in this barn. Now the Benders decide to take advantage of all the travelers using the trail and all the people going out west, right? Because it was the only road that led further west in the state at the time. So if you were coming through Kansas and you were taking the trail, you had to pass by what would become the Bender's Inn. And they converted it into the Bender's Inn by taking a canvas covering from a wagon and basically like making a curtain partition. So there was a front room and a back room across the barn. And the front room had a little kitchen and dining area, as well as a general store, and a little area where guests could spend the night. And then the back room was where the family lived.
Yeah, this is already a little spooky.
Elvira and Kate also planted an apple orchard on the property.
Why not?
And then Kate had a side hustle. She was not just the innkeeper's daughter. She was also a spiritualist. Which, if you're a longtime listener to the show, you will know this was just becoming a fad in these times with the sisters from New York. And now we have Kate Bender as well saying like, oh, I talk to dead people, so you can come see me and learn from your dead relatives.
Well, that's fun.
But now other families wanted to make a new start out west too. It wasn't just the Benders. So in the winter of 1872, a man named George Longcore and his infant daughter, Mary Ann, left Independence, Kansas to resettle in Iowa. One problem, Brian.
Iowa's cold. That's not the problem, is
No. They were never seen again.
it? That's a big problem.
This guy, George Longcore, he must have been like a really good guy because his neighbor, a guy named Dr. William Henry York, he's like, hey, I know that my neighbor was moving out there and he was going to get back in contact with me once he got to Iowa, and I never heard from him. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go look for him.
Wow, the mission.
Yeah. So William York decides to try to find out what happened to his neighbor, and he travels all along the Osage Trail, questioning homesteaders and travelers along the way. We know that he reached the end of the trail at Fort Scott because he's got a brother, Colonel York, who is stationed at Fort Scott at this time.
Sure.
And he reports that, yeah, I saw my brother and he was looking for his neighbor. And then a couple days later, he began the return journey home to Independence. But he never arrived home.
Weird.
So Dr. York has two brothers. One I've already mentioned. That's Colonel Ed York,
Yeah.
the one who's living in the Fort Scott. And also a guy named Alexander York, who happens to be a state senator.
Okay.
Both of the brothers knew about William's travel plans.
Mm-hmm.
And when he didn't return home, they immediately began an all-out search for their missing brother. Colonel York led a company of about 50 men and questioned travelers all along the trail, and he visited all the homesteads in the area asking questions about them.
Including?
Yes. On March 28th, 1873, Colonel York arrived at the Bender's Inn with a guy named Mr. Johnson. Apparently it's just the two of them. Now,
What happened to the 50?
Maybe they were searching other homes.
All
Yeah.
right.
He explained to them that his brother, William York, had gone missing, and he was asking the Benders if they'd seen him. They admitted that Dr. York had stayed with them, but they said, well, you know, it's possible that he was attacked by Indians. And Colonel York said, yeah, that's definitely a possibility, and he stayed there and had dinner with the family. During these investigations, the neighbors and fellow travelers reported strange rumors and stories of run-ins with the Benders.
They're a little off, maybe.
Yeah, you got the first hints that something's not quite right about these people. First was the question of just how the Benders were actually related to each other. It seems that most of the Benders' neighbors thought that John and Kate were not brother and sister, but actually husband and wife.
Yeah, like the show.
And they also said that like the older Benders kind of kept to themselves and would stay in the property, but John and Kate would go out and go to like church services and Sunday school and stuff. And of course, Kate had her spiritualism, so she talked to people through that. And it also mentions on Wikipedia that she was into free love.
Yeah,
that's all they say about it. They don't go into any detail at all about it.
Citation needed?
Yeah.
Okay.
But just saying.
Well, I guess who told these people what? So we started with the premise that these are mother, father, sister, brother, but the people that they met out there, is it that they were telling them that was the relationship, and then they saw these weird things and suspected that that would be wrong? So the only way that they knew what what the initial relationship between these people was that these people told them that's what it was.
I would guess, yeah.
Okay. So
But
they
I don't
could have
know.
just been lying the whole time, which is also weird.
Yeah. The locals claimed that Elvira Bender was so unfriendly that she was known as, quote, she-devil.
Hmm.
A man named William Pickering claimed that he had stopped at the Bender's Inn and says that Kate Bender told him to sit in the, quote, seat of honor for dinner. Pickering noticed that the chair she'd indicated was in front of that wagon curtain that separated the two rooms.
Yeah.
He also noticed large stains on the curtain around the chair. And when he commented on these stains and he refused to sit near the curtain, Kate threatened him with a knife.
Yeah, these people are cool.
He wisely ran out of the building.
Yeah, so this is Sweeney Todd.
Yeah.
Yeah, take a seat. Well, would you like some cream of wheat?
So a Catholic priest walks into the Bender's Inn.
Oh, now this is a joke.
Yeah. And he claims that he saw one of the Bender men attempting to conceal a large hammer.
Poorly?
Apparently.
All right.
Having seen this, the priest became uncomfortable,
Yep.
and he quickly vacated the premises.
Right. Are these people telling anybody these things, though?
I don't know if they mentioned it before, but certainly after the fact, it seems like these things kind of came to light.
Okay, well, that paints it another
Yeah.
light.
Two men had traveled to the inn to experience Kate Bender's psychic powers, her mediumship skills, so she could talk to the dead for them.
Sure.
They stayed for dinner, but, like Pickering, they also refused to sit at the table next to the stained curtain.
Were they
Now,
also threatened?
These stained
knives?
curtains must have been stained pretty badly because people are refusing to sit anywhere near them.
Yeah, where are we right now? Still in Oklahoma?
Kansas.
Kansas, yeah. I'm guessing a fairly new frontier in Kansas. Things inside your house are not exactly spotless to begin with.
Okay, so the men refused to sit at the stained curtain seat, and they said they'd prefer to eat their meal at the shop counter up front, you know.
Yeah.
Kate then became abusive towards them. And a short while later, they saw both Bender men emerge from behind the curtain. After this, the customers bounced.
Yeah. We're
Now,
getting
the
a
thing
pattern
is-
here.
The thing is, when I first read it, I didn't understand. I was reading too quickly, and I didn't get that the curtain was like this big curtain that was separating the two rooms. So I thought it was like a curtain, like a window curtain.
You can see their feet beneath it. Like,
Right.
shut up. You shut up.
And then two guys just like
Yeah.
emerge from behind that curtain.
Hello.
And I was like, that's a really funny image. Like if but no, separating two rooms. So okay, they could have. So, but honestly, too, then they could have just been hanging out back there, like not intending to murder.
It's true. Timing
Just
suspect,
saying.
though.
Just saying.
Are you going to join us for dinner? No. We'll be out later.
Now, the locals were also quick to point out that there had been other unsolved murders in the area just months before. In May of 1871, the body of a man whose skull had been crushed and his throat was cut was discovered in nearby Drum Creek. In February of 1872, two more bodies bearing the same injuries were discovered. On April 3rd, Colonel York returned to the inn with armed men after being informed that a woman had fled from the inn after being threatened with knives by Elvira Bender.
All right.
Elvira said she could not understand English when questioned and left it to the younger Benders to deny the woman's accusations. Colonel York repeatedly asked about the incident, and Elvira became enraged, saying, in English, that the woman was a witch who had cursed her coffee.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Elvira said that she denied threatening the woman with knives, but then she said, look, I did it because she's a witch and she had cursed my coffee.
Oh, boy. All right.
She then ordered York and his men to leave the house.
Just
Now-
her specific cup of coffee, or the entire store of coffee, or any coffee that you
That I
have
don't know.
from now on.
But the main thing here is that she spoke English,
Yeah,
like clearly.
maybe she just had learned that very specific phrase fluently.
She was a witch. She cursed my coffee. Get
Why
out
do you
of my
want to
house.
learn that?
Yeah.
Where's the library?
Yeah. So at this point, York was like, yeah, something's up here. But before he left, Kate took him by the arm and was like, hey, keep this on the DL.
You can't say that. Well, I guess he's not an officer of the law.
No.
But
That's not the part.
okay.
She's like, look, I know you're looking for your brother who's missing. And here's the thing. I'm a psychic medium.
Ah, boy.
So if you come back here on Friday night, I can use my abilities to help you find your brother. Yeah, you just come over, have some dinner with us. You can sit in the seat of honor.
Yep.
And I'll help you find your brother. So the York group left, and York and his men, especially his men, were convinced that the Benders were guilty.
Yeah.
But Colonel York
Oh, man.
was a lawman here, and he says, no, look, she probably is guilty, but we've got to have proof before we can't just be vigilantes and go in and murder these people.
Well, it's kind of admirable. I don't think it's going to work out for him, though. He's like, it's just me, though. It's just me. Yeah, ghosts get really scared if you bring guns, so
Yeah.
I have to go alone.
Yeah. So right around this time, neighboring communities began to make accusations that Osage County was responsible for a number of their people disappearing. They were like, we don't know what's going on, but you motherfuckers in Osage County, every time someone crosses into your territory, somebody goes missing.
Wow. Little civic rivalry here.
Yeah, so a big meeting was held in Osage at the local schoolhouse, and the meeting was attended by 75 locals, including Colonel York and both John Benders, Jr. and Sr.
Mm-hmm.
So people talked about the disappearances, and then Colonel York talked about the disappearance of his brother, and it was agreed that a search warrant would be obtained to search every single homestead between Big Hill Creek and Drum Creek. That included the Benders' property. However,
this is before or after the colonel went to get
This
all
is after.
spiritualized. So
no, sorry, he never went to that. She just
he
offered it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel better now.
Yeah. No, the colonel's safe. Don't worry. So it would take some time to write up the warrants and gather the manpower to conduct all these searches. So it didn't happen immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And also, they didn't have like a police department that was going to go out and watch the Benders or anything like that. So 3 days after the township meeting, a farmer was driving his cattle past the Bender property when he noticed that the inn had been abandoned and that the farm animals had not been fed. He mentioned this to the township trustee, and the trustee called for volunteers to search the Benders Inn immediately. Now, several hundred people turned up to form a search party, including, once again, Colonel York.
Yeah.
When the party arrived at the inn, they found that the cabin was empty of all food, clothing, and any kind of personal possessions. They did notice a bad odor and traced it to a trap door underneath a bed that had been nailed shut.
Cool stuff.
After opening the trap door, they found an empty room beneath. It was 6 feet down in the ground and 7 feet square at the top by 3 feet square at the bottom. So it kind of tapered down.
Yeah.
It was just a stone slab floor.
Yeah.
But they noticed that it had blood stains all over it, and there was clotted blood, and it was nasty.
Yeah, man.
So they said, well, there's probably bodies underneath this floor, right? So they got some sledgehammers, and they broke up the stones, but no bodies were found. And they said, well, I guess the odor was just the blood congealing and rotting in the soaked soil underneath this room here. So then they wanted to do like an extensive search. So it says that the men physically lifted the entire cabin and moved it to the side
All right.
so they could dig underneath it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, okay. But no bodies were found. Then they began to probe the ground around the cabin with a metal rod. And I do literally mean probe. Like, they'd stick it in there and be like, okay, well, this is going through very easily. I don't think there's anything under here. Oh, let's try over here. This one only went down like a foot or two.
This is just so they don't have to dig up the whole
here.
honking field?
I guess so. They're just poking the soil. This is how they did it. But they especially wanted to look at an area of the vegetable garden where there was some clearly disturbed soil. So they're poking around, and Dr. York's body was found in that orchard later on, the apple orchard that they had planted.
Okay.
So William York had finally been found. He's buried face down with his feet just barely below the surface. All these men kept probing the ground until midnight, and they found another 9 suspected grave sites that they marked before they were satisfied that they had found them all and went to bed for the night. Digging resumed the following morning, and they did in fact find 8 other bodies.
Radical.
In 7 graves, so 2 of them were buried together.
Yeah, it was a time.
And 1 was found in the well, along with a number of body parts.
Just miscellaneous?
Yeah.
All right.
All but 1 had their heads bashed in with a hammer and their throats cut.
Seems consistent.
It was also reported in newspapers that all of them had been, quote, indecently mutilated.
Ooh, I don't like that.
It does not expand upon what that might mean.
That's okay. I don't think we have to.
But indecently mutilated. There was a body of a young girl found with no injuries that would have been sufficient enough to cause death, so people speculated that they had either been strangled or buried alive. As they searched the house, they found a Roman Catholic prayer book, and there were some handwritten notes inside, written in German, and they had to be translated. And the text read, Johanna Bender. Isn't that the name you said earlier?
I said Joanna, but
close.
If I had been thinking German, yeah, that's pretty weird.
Born July 30th, 1848.
1848?
I said 1848, right?
Yeah.
Okay. John Gebhardt.
Okay.
Came to America July 1st, 18... question mark. I don't know if the question marks are because they didn't write it, or because they wrote question mark, or because they couldn't read what the person wrote. It is believed that John Gebhardt is actually John Bender Jr. That his real name was John Gebhardt.
Okay.
They also found written Big Slaughter Day, Jan 8th.
Sure.
And then also...
I celebrate that.
And then also Hell Departed.
Hell Departed?
Yeah. Just said Hell Departed.
All right.
Maybe that was the day they left. Who knows?
Maybe.
Word of the murders spread quickly, and the Bender's cabin was destroyed by souvenir hunters who took everything, including the bricks that lined the cellar and the stones lining the well.
And some of the body parts.
Yeah, hopefully those were gone by the time. But,
you would hope.
Yeah.
But this is the 1800s.
It's true. Now, as I mentioned, Dr. William York had a brother who was a senator, and he offered a $1,000 prize, which in today's money would be about $20,000.
All right.
$20,500 almost, actually. On May 17th, Kansas Governor Thomas Osborne offered $2,000, which would be about almost $41,000 actually today, for the apprehension of all 4 Benders.
Oh, you have to get all 4 of them?
Yeah.
Nah.
Gotta catch them all.
I wish.
Now, we don't know for certain what went on in the Bender household, but based on the bodies that were discovered and some of the people who claim to have had these run-ins with the Benders, the speculation is that when a guest would stay at the Benders' bed and breakfast, the host would give the guest the, quote, seat of honor at the table, which was positioned just over a trap door that led to the cellar. With the victim's back to the curtain separating the front room from the back room, Kate would distract the guest, while one of the Johns would come from behind the curtain and strike the guest on the right side of the skull with the hammer. The victim's throat was then cut by one of the women to ensure that they were dead. The body was then dropped through the trap door. Once in the cellar, the body would be stripped and later buried somewhere on the property, often in the orchard. Although some of the victims had been quite wealthy, others had been carrying little of value on them, and it was surmised that the Benders had killed them simply for the sheer thrill.
Or they didn't know, right?
Yeah, could just be that they were like, well, they might have something in their pockets. Let's kill them and find out.
I mean, we do like it, but we're not doing this randomly.
Yeah.
We want money.
I don't really have a ton of notes about it, but there were some other people, because to me this wasn't the more interesting part of the story, but there are some other people who, like, apparently would trade with the Benders, and they knew that they were, like, robbing people, at least, at the very least, that they were robbing people. But they just kind of turned a blind eye to it. And those people were arrested and faced judgment.
Screw it, man.
And all that kind
Capitalism.
of stuff. Yeah.
It's cool. Nothing ever goes wrong.
Yeah. Now, as for the Benders themselves, that's the big question. What happened to the Bloody Benders, as they came to be known? Detectives followed wagon tracks that were leaving the Benders' house. And they discovered the Benders' wagon abandoned with a starving team of horses. One of the horses, by the way, was lame, so they think that's why they just abandoned these horses, just outside the city limits of Thayer, which was about 12 miles from the Benders Inn. It was confirmed that the family had bought train tickets to get them to Humboldt, Kansas. And shortly thereafter, John Jr. and Kate split from the older Benders and apparently traveled to an outlaw colony on the border region between Texas and New Mexico.
An outlaw colony.
Yeah, and it said that lawmen didn't try to follow him into that colony because lawmen didn't come back from that colony.
I guess I understand that.
Yeah.
You're pretty outnumbered.
Now, we don't really have a lot to back up this information, but one detective claims that he did trace the pair to this border colony, where he found that John Jr. had died of complications from a stroke.
Or cholera.
Yeah. Elvira and John Bender Sr. took the train all the way to Kansas City, where it's believed that they purchased tickets for St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay. I'm a little confused, but go on.
Several groups of vigilantes were formed to search for the Benders, and many stories say that one of the vigilante groups actually caught the Benders and shot them all, except for Kate, who they burned alive. Another group claimed that they had caught the Benders and lynched them before throwing their bodies into the Verdigris River.
So, I guess all these people did not hear about the reward, or...
Well, hold on, there's more. Yet another claimed to have killed the Benders during a gunfight and buried their bodies on the prairie. But as you point out, nobody collected the $3,000 reward, which would have been upwards of $60,000 today. The story of the Benders' escape spread, and the search continued on and off for the next 50 years. Often, any two women traveling together, if one was a little bit older and one was younger, they would be accused of being Mrs. Bender and her mother.
That's a fun side effect.
Yeah, but there is one that they took a little bit more seriously. On October 31st, Halloween night, 1889, it was reported that a woman calling herself Mrs. Elmira Monroe
All right.
and a younger woman named Sarah Elizabeth Davis had been arrested in Michigan several weeks earlier for larceny. They were released after being found not guilty, but they were immediately rearrested for the Bender murders. Why, you may ask?
I would.
Because the daughter of one of the Bender's victims, a Mrs. Frances E. McCain, had reported the pair to authorities in early October after tracking them down. This is where it gets a little strange.
Yeah, it was pretty normal up till this point, but just before you get into it, so this woman had tracked them down previously? What exactly is her expertise?
I don't know, and it doesn't explain how she tracked them down, really, except...
Hey, there they are.
Except for this part. You're going to like this. Now, how did she track them down? Well, she claims that her murdered father came to her in dreams.
Wow, this is perfect. This is right up your alley, buddy.
And she also says that she talked about these dreams with the younger woman in this pair, Sarah Eliza.
Yeah.
Now, the women's identities as Ma and Kate Bender were later confirmed by 2 Osage Township witnesses from a tintype photograph. So they said, they looked at the pictures and said, yeah, that's the Benders, that's them. In mid-October, Deputy Sheriff Leroy Dick,
Come on.
that's his name.
Yeah.
He was the Osage Township trustee who had also led the search of the Benders' property. He arrived in Michigan, and he's the one who actually arrested the couple. Mrs. Monroe resisted arrest, declaring that she would not be taken alive.
Normal.
But she was subdued by local deputies.
Okay.
Now, Mrs. Davis.
In perfect English, though, right?
It oddly doesn't mention if they tried to speak in accents or not. I don't know. But Mrs. Davis, who was the younger of the 2 women arrested, claims that Mrs. Monroe actually was Elvira Bender. That's true.
Okay.
But she said that she herself was not Kate, but that she was, in fact, Kate's sister, Sarah.
Kate's dead, but I talk to her all the time.
Yeah.
Come sit in my chair.
She later signed an affidavit saying as much. But Mrs. Monroe continued to deny being Elvira Bender. However, she in turn said, no, that chick, Sarah Eliza Davis, that is the real Kate Bender.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of... But since when is there a sister, though? That kind of came out of nowhere.
Well, okay, so it's a little hard to figure out. I didn't write all this down because there was no point. It gets so muddled.
Yeah.
By the time I finish saying the list, everyone would just be like, I don't know what he's talking about.
Genealogy wasn't exactly...
This woman, they believe that Elvira Bender was not this person's real name.
Sure.
They also believe that this woman, Elmira, that we just learned about, was born in upstate New York.
Okay.
So she would not, in theory, have had a German accent at all.
Right.
At all. But there's some belief, if this actually is Elvira, that she had been married previously.
Okay.
Up to maybe 3 or 4 times.
Sure.
And that she had actually 12 children, of which Kate is her biological daughter, and she would have been the 5th child.
Okay. Yeah. Still not buying that hugely, because also I went out west with your sister and killed a bunch of people. Then I come back and you're cool with all that, and you go around with me, and you go back out west with me.
Yeah. Well, so are you thinking? What are you thinking, that these 2 had nothing to do with it, or that they are the Benders, both of them?
I would say both.
Okay.
I would say both or none.
Because I do think it's odd that they don't just both flat deny being the Benders. They just accuse the other one of being the real Bender.
Yeah.
Like the one they're actually looking for.
I think that's fairly in line with what we've heard. Especially Kate seems a little more into machinations and the like.
Now, Deputy Sheriff Dick, along with Mrs. McCann, escorted the pair back to Kansas, where 7 members of a 13-member panel said, yeah, we do think that these are the Benders, and we're going to put them on trial. So now they have a trial.
Enough to indict. That was the grand jury.
But during this time, another daughter shows up.
Okay.
With proof, she says, that her mother, Elmira, was actually already serving time in prison in Michigan during the Bender murders.
Okay.
So she couldn't possibly be Elvira Bender.
Yeah.
They also bring in some papers that say that also around this time, Elmira was getting married to a man named Mr. Shear.
Sure.
and we have documents to prove it, so this couldn't have been her. Now, Elmira, for her part, says, I've never heard of Mr. Scheer. I'm not Mrs. Scheer. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
All right.
And then I think when she figures out that the papers are from the time when she would be murdering, she goes, oh, yes, I did do that. I did. Yes, I did get married to that guy.
Who can keep track? I mean, really.
She gave some reasons why she denied it, but whatever. That's whatever.
Oh, boy.
So eyewitnesses swore up and down that this Mrs. Monroe was, in fact, Elvira Bender. Judge Calvin looked at the affidavit that this other daughter had submitted, and he said, I am going to dismiss this out of hand.
Whoa.
Because this daughter is a wacko just like her mama. So he says, I don't put any credence to this piece of paper saying that this person was in jail at the time.
Oh, okay.
However, I do see that there's other affidavits saying that she was married, and we got some other stuff going on, and I do find it sufficient proof that we can't actually convict these women just based on eyewitness testimony, because we have other things saying that maybe it's not really them. We don't really have a very strong case, so you're both acquitted.
When was this? 1880 something?
Yeah, I don't know the 18.
Is that how it worked back then? Like
1889.
The jury comes back with a verdict, and he's like, "Yeah, nah."
Oh, it wasn't the jury. There was
judge.
like a panel that said that
so they didn't bring it to trial at all.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how
I'm
justice
just
works now
wondering,
or in 1889.
Frontier justice, yeah.
Well, actually, I'm a little bit surprised, if anything, that we have this much justice to talk about.
I guess so. I mean, it's in the Constitution, although I don't know when the various constitutional amendments actually happened, so that would probably be necessary information.
Now, while these two women definitely were criminals, and definitely were liars, and up to no good, again, the charges against them are weak, and we don't really have any real solid evidence to convince us that they were the Benders, although, eyewitness testimony is a funny thing, especially more than, it's almost 20 years after the crimes were committed that people are saying, oh, that's definitely them.
Yeah.
But again, my big sticking point is, why are they suddenly accusing each other of being the Benders? And why especially is the daughter saying, like, no, I am a Bender daughter, but I'm not that Bender daughter.
Not that one. I'm the good one.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we're assuming that they've heard of these people, at least.
Yeah.
Prior to being tried for being them. Like, that probably made its way around Kansas.
Yeah, well, but they were up in Michigan when they started this. Like, no, I am, but I'm not. But I'm not.
Yeah, that is
them.
weird.
It's just weird. Like, why would they say that?
I don't know.
Well,
just volunteering.
In 1884, an elderly man, matching John Bender Sr.'s description, was arrested in Montana for a murder committed in Idaho. The victim in that murder had been killed by a hammer blow to the head.
Yep.
A message requesting positive identification was sent to Kansas, but the suspect severed his own foot in an effort to escape the leg irons, but he bled to death.
I was going to say he bled out. Well, that's...
By the time the deputy from Kansas had arrived, identification was impossible due to decomposition.
Gross.
Despite the lack of identification, the man's skull was displayed as that of Pa Bender's in a saloon.
I was going to say, where in the museum?
Until Prohibition forced the closure of the saloon in the 1920s, and the skull has since disappeared. I already kind of talked about the family aspect of it. It seems most likely Ma and Pa Bender were maybe not legally married, but perhaps a couple at the time.
Yeah.
And that John Jr. was not blood related to anyone in the family, and that Kate actually probably was Elvira's daughter and John Jr.'s wife, maybe, or just someone she slept with sometimes, or who knows?
I don't know, man.
Who knows what's going on with her?
Seems like they're all some pretty hardcore folks.
Yeah, and we never get a real resolution to the case.
So, So cases like this, we just give up. Like, I mean, I get it. It's over 150 years at this point, but it's just like, yeah, it happened. We screwed up. We couldn't bring it to trial, and we'll just wash our hands of that forever.
Well, I think at the time, maybe I don't know if there was anything more they could have done. Now, of course, there's DNA testing.
Yeah,
but we'd have to have confirmed family members, which, as we saw, because by the way, this other daughter that showed up at the trial had a completely different last name.
Yeah.
So were they actually a daughter even?
Yeah, but what do you mean had a completely different last name? Like she
showed up and she was, I forget, I didn't write down the name, but
right, but like she showed him her birth certificate. Like I
know.
feel like back then you could just be like, yeah, I'm Bob Fleece. Like just say anything you wanted and it was believable. And I feel like I'm not giving the 1800s maybe quite enough credit for competency when it comes to general justice or practically anything. But like, yeah, eyewitness accounts, they are a funny thing. And 20 years later, they are a funnier thing. But it's not like people got worse. It's not like people back then were worse at looking at people and recognizing them.
Yeah.
Or maybe they were. Maybe culturally that's changed. But
probably less glasses around.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. People can't see great, but don't know that they can't see great.
Yeah.
They're just like, this is how it is.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I don't know. I thought that was a very interesting case. There is a historical marker describing the Benders' crimes.
Well, I should hope so.
Located in a rest area at the junction of Route 400 and Route 169, and this is north of Cherryville, Kansas.
Pass.
Sorry, Cherryvale.
Cherryvale. I'm back in.
All right. Road tripping.
Yeah. No, that was good, man. That was the first one that we've done in a while where I was just like, I'm just going to listen to this.
There's a lot.
Don't say much, yeah.
There's a lot to say. It's good. This will be a nice long episode. I did a kind of a short one last time, so it's good to have.
The Bloody Benders.
Yeah.
The Bloody Bender Band.
This was a case that I hadn't heard of too much, although now it's kind of all over the internet, but I hadn't heard too much about it. I think it's one of those things where you don't know about it, so you don't pay attention to it, even if you do see it, and then once you learn about a thing,
yeah,
you see it everywhere. So I'm glad to be late to the party on this one, I guess. But
yeah, not great. But when did the Sweeney Todd Penny Dreadful? When was that written? Was it the 1700s? This is very similar. Yeah. Someone gets their throat slit and then falls down a trap door into onto stone pavement.
Let's do that next time.
But also this is not going to be interesting, so you'll probably cut it out because I can't remember the name of this movie.
I'll try to help you out.
There's also there's a movie I saw with Ron Perlman where a bunch of just liberal kids they kill someone by accident and then decide, hey, why can't we just murder people we don't like? So if they don't like a political commentator or something, they'll have them over for dinner and then poison them. And it was mainly the burying them in the backyard thing. Yeah. Where they were starting to run out of room because they had to bury people everywhere. It wasn't bad. I liked it.
All right, Ron Perlman. He's come up several times on this podcast.
He is
I couldn't think of his name one time. I was totally blanking on it, and whoever was here was not helpful.
He is a terrifying looking person. Not anymore, really, but just enormous features, huge teeth.
He is very distinctive.
He's very, very suited for horror and
he'd be a good
suspense.
Pa Bender in the movie.
Let's do it.
About it.
Let's make this happen. I think he might be a little too old now, but
no, he was in his 60s or 70s.
He was?
Yeah,
oh,
he was
shoot.
64, right?
All right, let's make this happen. Who you got for Little John?
Let's go with why do I blank on everybody's name? He's super famous, and he's in the Deception Artist right now.
Disaster Artist. James Franco?
Artist. Yeah, James Franco. Let's get James Franco.
Oh, yeah, that shouldn't be too tough, right? Have you heard of this murder from the 1800s that nobody cares about? I'm in.
What do you want for Kate? Or Elvira? I mean, we could get Elvira for Elvira. She's more known for her comedy.
A little synergy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, how old was Kate supposed to be? 25, 23?
23.
23. I don't know. That might be like a reach part for Ellen Page. See if she can get a little freaky.
Ellen Page.
Yeah.
All right.
Just small. I can see her doing the spiritualist stuff.
I know that she's technically older than the part, but Anne Hathaway, she brings it every time, man.
I don't know if she can be creepy. I'm not sure. Maybe.
But I don't know if she is creepy until she like pulls out a knife on you. But like the rest of the time, I would imagine if
She's the
Hollywood,
honeypot.
if in the Hollywood version, yeah, in real life, I bet she was nothing like that. I bet she was just like a fucking nightmare. But
People who kind of used to that on the range, they're like, whatever.
yeah, but
All right.
yeah, very good.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's the end of this episode. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? Tell people to go to the website, spookyas.com or spookyasshit.com. They'll both take you to the same place, and that is the show's blog page. From there, you can find every episode and find pictures. I don't know if there'll be any for this week, unless we make like fake movie posters or something. But you can find pictures from other episodes and sometimes outtakes and YouTube videos and stuff like that. You can also find links to our social media. We are at Spooky Ass Shit on both Instagram and Twitter. And you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/spookyas. We are coming up on not only the 2-year birthday of the show, but also the 100th episode. I believe this is episode 95, so we're getting there.
Woo! Kid.
Yeah. So join the Spooky AS community on the social medias. And of course, thank you for listening. And please do share the show with friends, and don't forget to keep those 5-star reviews coming on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you happen to listen from. Anything else to say, Brian Toney?
Nope.
Very good. Until next time, don't be afraid.